So, I wrote these two provisions because of a few reasons. Now, we are dealing with a pretty serious issue. Back in the 1970s, like 1976 or something, or 1971, you used to be able to get 1.8 ounces of gold a week for working. And you would make $1.80 an hour, right? Which was the minimum wage, except you'd be able to get $6,000 or something worth of, or is it might be 1.8 ounces of gold every 2 weeks for every paycheck. You'd be able to get $6,000 worth of gold, okay? And so that's a month, right? If we're talking about wealth, the wealth was transferred up to the banks and mega corporation, and the banks own mega corporation. And they own about 90 or more percent of all the goods at the supermarket. So their position is going to never change. And what we're trying to do is establish a maximum amount of wealth that people can attain with the lock-in proviso as the precept being followed, and is a lock-in precepts of property. So I'm going to read this to you. Now, I am homeless, and this matters because this would actually provide for a universal basic income for those who have zero to low income, but it also funds the social security system for the entire country, and not only for those who would be on SSI, but for those on disability and for those who are retired. And everybody owns their own account in my country. But the lock-in proviso basically says that people should not take so much that there is not enough for others, and that they're taking so much that they're not going to use, pretty much. And passing on generational wealth upon generational wealth over and over and over again for the big bankers basically means an oligarchy owns everything. And I think we all know that's wrong. So it's not about socialism or communism. I'm against socialism and communism. This is technically libertarian if you want to extend the Lockean proviso and then maybe Georgism or egalitarianism. But I'm just going to read this because I wanted Monique to hear this, because David, and she knows what I'm talking about. And if you know, then you know, right? Further elaborating upon the restriction on government to regulate the use of private property, there shall be no regulation of individually held, privately owned money, including but not limited to incomes derived from any lawful source, monetary resources, gifts, or any other form of capital, up to the point in which it does not conflict with the Lockean precepts of property, in the interest of justice in securing legitimate Lockean property rights, whereas a person has the right to all they can employ upon their own labor, so that they have no temptation to acquire for themselves more than they can make use of, in this leaving no room for controversy about the right to title, nor for lawful encroachment upon such right of others. It must also be said that it is useless as well as dishonest, vile, repugnant, disgusting, covetous, gourmandish, unethical, exploitive, and improprietary to carve out too much of the common resources, as well as to take or acquire more than one needs for securing and maintaining their life and livelihood. The law shall ensure that individuals and artificial entities do not accumulate so much property that there is not enough resources for others. Such caps on wealth shall begin. I'm going to fix this. Begin kicking in at 12 times the national mean income, where there shall be a total and complete limit of yearly wealth at 108 times the mode of national income, and a maximum combined stowed wealth and or financialized wealth in investment accounts which can be no more than 9 times the base value of 3 Mobius, or 37.6991. These are little arbitrary numbers, but I didn't want to just put 36. I wanted to kind of put in a little bit higher number because I wanted 9 to be 10, and I thought this looks a lot better as far as like people are in numbers and stuff. The mean national income with progressive greed penalty rates at 12 divisors, and it starts at 20% and it goes up to 100%. So if you had 108 times wealth, beyond that level, you'd be then taxed at 100%. Because you can have 12 times it, and you only be paying 22%. That's 12 times the yearly income, right? Which is a lot of money. And that's the mean income. So that's everyone's income added up and then divided, right, by the number of people. And that's still lower than most people pay taxes in the United States on your everyday person paying like 25% of their taxes. Okay, so like this is definitely reasonable. But let's go beyond this. So a progressive greed penalty rate of total advisors between 20% up to 100%, the rate at the value exceeding the maximum caps on all wealth, whether income, investment, dividends, or stowed. Any landowner who acquires a plot of land or number of them, whether through inheritance or purchase, must be limited to what their person and cohabitating members can actively employ their labor to productively use without waste. This means land sufficient for self-sufficient farming or habitation without waste or spoilage, roughly equal to the amount needed for subsistence and support of household labor. Reasonable use means enough land so a person can sustain themselves and pursue a livelihood, but no more than necessary to do so well. Simply owning or hoarding, and that was um, like Thomas Paine too. This is John Locke and Thomas Paine we're talking about in George. Simply owning or hoarding land beyond what it can use violates the proviso. Because of this, they shall pay an excessive land penalty not to exceed 14.4% per annum, the assessed value of land, improvements accepted, which means they don't have to pay for the value increase for improvements, held in excess of their individual need as ascertained by law. The money collected from this mechanism is like a land tax, but we don't really do taxes per se. This is excessive wealth penalty, is what we're calling it. Yeah, we're getting creative with the language. That's something they're going to do in the future, guys. Be careful about creative language they use to not call a thing what it really is. I don't like taxes. We abolished it, but I am trying to implement this and not call it a tax, but have it be a part of the Lockean right to property instead. And the right to property being secured by government also means the right of the poor to have property. And John Locke was a pauper, so we'll figure that out. Um, the money collected from this mechanism shall be placed into a secure, non-divertible trust fund for the purposes of dispersing national wealth dividends to citizens, both the Social Security account deposits for all of the Cascadians, and direct payments for zero to low income individuals to be partitioned and dispersed as provided by law. The purpose of this provision is to ensure that there is not waste and make sure there is enough left good in condition for others to acquire in a like manner, as well as that there be common means of attaining sufficiency for life and preservation, in order that all can provide for their own needs. The attainment and use of property must not worsen the situation of others by depriving them access to sufficient resources for their own subsistence and use. No law shall impair lawful attainment and use of property, income, or wealth, except to prevent circumstances in which the accumulation or use of property would materially worsen the condition of the poor and others with respect to their opportunity to sustain themselves or preserve the equal rights of persons in relation to common resources. Congress has the power to enforce this provision by appropriate legislation. So that's a wealth limit. Then we have the automation thing. This is like Andrew Yang was talking about doing a value added tax. What we're going to do is directly impose the charge on the enterprise themselves, except for small scale, like one person doing a 3D printer to make things. They don't have to pay for this, and we explicitly protect them. It says, except those businesses run or operate exclusively by the owner themselves. So if you're a small business running it all by yourself, you don't have to worry about this at all. The federal government shall impose a charge on enterprises deriving economic value from automation technologies, including robotics, artificial intelligence, and other automated processes that displace human labor, except those businesses run or operated exclusively by the owner themselves. This automation charge shall be calculated based on the value added by such technologies and shall be progressively scaled to reflect the degree of labor displacement caused. Revenues collected from this charge shall be deposited into an unemployment fund managed for the benefit of the public to finance unemployment benefits and other social safety programs supporting individuals displaced by automation. Such programs shall ensure income security, facilitate workforce retraining and economic transition, and maintain consumer demand to promote economic stability. The federal government shall also revise existing fiscal incentives to prevent disproportionate subsidies favoring automation that to prevent disproportionate subsidies favoring automation that undermines employment. The charge shall not exceed a rate of 8.3% of the financial gains the enterprise produces. The purpose of this provision is to equitably share the wealth generated by automation to those most directly impacted by it, protect the livelihoods of workers, and sustain an inclusive economy responsive to technological advancement. Congress shall have the power to enact legislation necessary to enforce this provision. So, both of those are like a type of regulation of either property or business, pretty much. And we don't really want there to be regulation on the use of property. We want people to have the choice to use it as they want, keeping in mind that if people don't have any work to do because they've all been displaced by automation and the businesses continue to rack up money and people who had been working have lost their job because of automation can't get hired right away and they're still trying to learn and get trained, and they need to have a safety net set up for that specific scenario. So this isn't just some sort of like broad public welfare system is just going to give everybody money because of automation. It's specifically for the people who are being disadvantaged because of the automation and displaced by the automation. That's a narrowly tailored remedy, right? And then, as far as this wealth redistribution scheme, the numbers are a little bit arbitrary, although there's definitely what one would consider an unreasonably large amount of money for a person to have to ever be considered to spend in their life. So if somebody's already making 12 times the amount of income, right? That means you work 1 year, they have 12 years worth of the money you would have gotten in that year. Then at the maximum amount is 108 times the amount of 12. It's a total complete limit of 108. So they would have 108 years worth of pay for every year you were paid. See how that begins to look pretty unfair? And we're trying to make it so that you can still have a lot of wealth, but you can't have unlimited wealth. And we want to be able to fund the social welfare system for people who have almost no money. So the people who are extremely wealthy would pay for that. That's kind of the concept here. And it really doesn't mean you're going to be poor either. It just means extreme amounts of wealth are not the way that things are going to be allowed to go. This Lockean proviso is what we actually use to justify that. We're not using Marxism at all. So if it seems to be Marxism because of the Lockean proviso, then we have to understand that the right to property must not be fully unlimited. And every other right has a precedent, including the right to life and health. And if these people don't even have the ability to protect themselves from elements by having shelter or having food to eat so they can survive, and our society doesn't really value the lives of other people. And if we're only going to expect charitable institutions to do that, that's not going to work very well because the church right now tries to feed all the people and they mostly feed us crap. Like, not healthy food, because I am homeless. So I kind of have a vested interest in having some sort of protective social welfare system or safety net. But these wealth caps are a really interesting concept because there are leftists who believe that there should be wealth caps. I don't really know any conservatives that believe in wealth caps. The thing is, man, 60% of people almost, is 59%, are one paycheck, having missed one paycheck away from not being able to afford their rent and then losing their house and being homeless. More than half. So there needs to be some sort of mechanism in place for the people who are already at the bottom, which is a lot of Americans, to have some sort of way to at least have the burden of life taken off them to an extent. I think this is a great way to do that. It's using the idea of selfishness has got a penalty for selfishness when it comes to greed in particular. I don't know if we called it greed, but we have every other bit of language. Covetous, that's a good one. Dishonest. What's dishonest about all of this wealth? Remember, the big banks and the mega corporation CEOs are the ones making this fucking money. It's not a hardworking man at all. These people have their lives paid for when they were born. They're in managerial positions honorarily. They wouldn't have to worry about it. They do their pedophile island stuff with Jeffrey Epstein, okay? So I think there's no problem here. You can call it what you want. You can call it communist. You can call it whatever. It's not. I'm telling you because we protect property rights in this fucking system. We don't have other if but ands. This is the only if but and then we have like other parts in here. Emanations beyond property lines. You can't regulate a property. And only in the case of pollution, and there are exceptions to the pollution rule for small scale stuff for survival, self sustenance. We protect people's property rights. You have the right to fix your own equipment. We protect you from corporations that build things that are designed to fail or brick themselves, like when the battery's too old, even if it still works. So I think this is a really good system. This is definitely not communist. We even talk about a laissez-faire free market system. It's like, we're not Marxist. We're not trying to abolish capitalism. And this is not abolish capitalism at all. But it's hoarding, right? Hoarding wealth, hoarding land. That's what the Bill Gates and the big corporations and stuff are doing right now. They're buying up all the farmland and shit. So I think this is a great idea. This puts it back in the hands of the people and it disincentivizes them to have an excess than what they actually need, which makes perfect fucking sense. And so, and the reason I really made this video is this caps on wealth. I wanted David to see this, so Monique, show David this video. I think it would be a great idea to do. I just want to tell you, this is part of the Cascadia project I'm doing. Those two provisions are mostly new. This one's a little bit older, but I've modified it and fixed it up. They're looking really good. This is the Andrew Yang provision, the value added automation sort of fee or charge, whatever we called it. And the reason we're doing this is to protect people from being exploited by a system of capitalism which is highly exploitive already. I think capitalism is not the problem, it's that there's not a good incentive for people to do the right thing. So we're incentivizing the most positive outcome we can come up with, which is individuals actually own their property. This is not the government stripping you of the right to property. This is the government saying excessive property is a type of tragedy of the commons, even, or a tragedy of a private, even, where excessive amounts of wealth can be used for control. And that we already have social, progressive, fucking democratic shit in there. That's like, we prevent monopolies, we prevent antitrust actions. So this is really considered good, and for competitiveness and stuff. When everything is hedged by four major banks or whatever, four major corporations owned by like central banks of the world, you really think it's a good idea to let them continue to own all that shit like BlackRock? I don't. So who this is going to impact are the extremely wealthy people because of how it's predicated at the mean the wealth and the mode wealth, the most often occurring wealth, right? So the mean is the average wealth, right? This is a great fucking system to implement. The only reason you'd be against it is you are such a purist in your capitalist enterprise ideas. You think anybody should be able to have $100 billion and it's not a problem. Well, what are they going to do with $100 billion? None of their business. They're going to pass it on generationally, and they're going to continue to own things and control things that way. It's like one thing if it lasts in their lifetime, and if they had the money they'd spend by the end of their life that was finally like taken care of, but like they didn't have excessive wealth, passed down 100 generations worth of wealth, and from one family move on to the next, the next, the next. They own everything on earth. That's why your value of your work is nothing now. And you don't own a home, you rent an apartment and shit, and it's happening more and more. Or if you have a home, you pay the bank for your mortgage, and you don't own your home yet. The fucking bank owns it for now, bitch. So I'm just telling you, you don't have to like it, but it's a fact. It's a fact, and the reason why I think this is a good idea is it prevents that fucking greed. It hard codes a limit into how much you can hoard away for yourself. How extremely wealthy you can be. You have your whole life fucking paid for. Why do you need to continue to gather even more money than that? Especially when you could start paying for your child's life and bring them all the way up to the age of 18 and push them out in the world to be productive. And this is like the thing, man. It's not about greed. It's not about what's it called? Jealousy. It's about a reasonable fucking limit, dude. There's got to be a limit to how much money one reasonably believes any person could ever actually spend. And any amount beyond that, it's a limited amount of currency and supply. So the more money they're chasing, the less money is available for other people is technically, in a certain manner, speaking true, which means they got to print even more money, which devaluates the money you got just so there's money circulating to pay the people who are looking for currency. It's a big fucking deal, especially everything's run on debt. But we don't need to go into all of the aspects of the broken ass system. But the Cascadia plan that I wrote, which is on WordPress, cascadiaplan.wordpress.com. I got my Cascadia shirt on. All of my videos all flipped around backwards because it's fucking front facing camera. Cascadia shirt. And I think it's a great idea. But whatever. Pacific Northwest. I've been running it by AI. Mostly progressive here. And the support for the Cascadia movement split between local autonomy and regional secession. And I'm a regional secessionist, and I really think that we should have a progressive libertarian hybrid syncretic system that allows us to have an ideal fucking society. I think this is one of the things I wouldn't say, oh, this stays or nothing or bust, right? I'd rather get rid of this provision right here, the redistribution thing basically. Oh, this is the AI one. The redistribution provision here, and keep the rest of the system. But it does make sense to not have this fucking huge list of issues: dishonest, foul, repugnant, disgusting, covetous, gourmandish, unethical, exploitive, and proprietary. Greedy. Carve out too much of the common resources as well. Take or require more than one needs for security and maintain their life and livelihood. We could add, and that of their progeny. We'll just say that of their kin. And we'll say closest, right? We'll just say close. That leaves a little more open. But the point is, this is an important idea to actually float, especially with the way the New World Order and everything is set up with Klaus Schwab and the World Banks and all that. Even if we don't redistribute the wealth and we just put it into the government's fucking general fund, so that it's not being used for like a income thing for the low income people or people who don't have any money. I really think we should have something like that. It was sort of floated in the generic principle, at least, of inherited land was floated by Thomas Paine. So these are old ideas that predate Marx. And I think it's reasonable. We are allowed there to still be capital enterprise. You own your business. If you make extreme amounts of money, at a certain point in time, we got to say it's too much. Should you raise the limits I put? Yeah, go ahead, raise them. Make 108, 144, make 12, 14.4, make 9 and a 10. I don't give a fuck. Make 37.6991 and 48, whatever it is. Have something coded in there. It's got to have something reasonable. So that's the purpose of this video, is basically talking about capital and wealth, so we'll leave it at that. Peace, everyone.